So this is week 9, multivariate data. So I'm just going to talk about what goes in here. Okay, so let's go through the slides first. Remember, we're doing the PPDAC cycle, right? This is the statistical inquiry cycle. It's just generally how we deal with data. And the first one is, of course, P for problem. The next one is plan. The next one is data. And the problem is, and in your report, when we write it in our actual internal, this is also the order we would write it. So we would have these 5 separate headings, like different chapters, and we would say problem, big title, and then have a sentence in there or two, right? And, we talked about, I wonder if something, something, something tends to be bigger than something, something, something. That's the problem sentence, that kind of stuff. The plan is, I will get the data from wherever. I'm going to use NZ-Grapher and figure out all these numbers. I will analyze it using this website. That kind of stuff. Data is the actual graph, and the graph is going to be, it's going to have dots, and it's going to have like a box and whisker graph. So putting that picture in, of course, with some writing on the side and on the top as well, but that picture that we get, that image we get from NZ-Grapher, that is our data. All right, cool. Now, this A is analysis. And this is where we're at the moment. And analysis has quite a few things we need to talk about. So inside analysis, there's like 4 different things we might want to talk about. One was center. Or you might want to write center like this, up to you. But center being, we were talking about the median. Is the median for one group higher than the other one? Then the next one was shape of the distribution. So was it a normal distribution? Is it left skewed? Is it right skewed? And you'll say that that sentence about shape. And then the one we're doing now at the moment is spread. And this is where we're at this week. Cool. Spread is about how far our data varies, like how small and how big does it get? Is it all like relatively the same, or is it really spread out, right? So if I talk about prices for cars, are they all relatively the same in this group, or is there like a really large variety in the price of cars? Does it go from really high to really low? So that kind of thing is what we're talking about here, and the spread. And there's a very particular type of spread that we're gonna use to analyze. So let's talk about it. Now, there is one more from analysis, and we have the C for conclusion to do. But since we're here at the moment, that's where we're at, and we'll set off on our way. So let's talk about this on the left-hand side here now. Okay, now there's 2 different measures of spread, 2 common ones that we're going to use. Range and interquartile range. Now, range just means how far is the very lowest point all the way up to the very biggest point in your data. So if it was plane tickets, for example, plane ticket prices, the range would be how far is the difference between the most expensive ticket in your data set that you found out and the very cheapest. So that is called the range. But this is not the one we're going to use mainly. We're going to use the interquartile range a lot more. Oops, sorry for the bad handwriting. Yep, interquartile range. Now, interquartile range is talking about, well, actually, before I get there, let's talk about what the box and whisker graph looks like. It looks like that. It looks like that And the reason it looks like that is saying inside between here, that point there and that point there is our lowest 25%. Like it's a quarter of our data. So if we had 100 data points, if you found out 100 different prices for cars, the lowest 25% is represented in this gap here. This gap here is going to be, of course, the middle from that point to that point, from the middle, the median, and then 25% down, and then so on and so forth. So it's divided up into quarters. So here's the part where it concerns us about interquartile range. That point there where it exactly cuts the sort of a quarter up from the bottom line, we call that the lower quartile. Like quartile as like quarters. It's the lower where the quarter is cut. It's the lower one. So of course this one we can guess is called the upper quartile. Right? So the interquartile range is just the difference between these 2 points. So the gap between there to there to there is our interquartile range, right? And this one is way more helpful for us in our data set. It's usually more informative, and we'll talk about that as we go, but that's the one we're going to use mainly. So we're saying how spread out is the middle 50%. And of course that middle, not just the median, but that's what we're talking about. Now, how do we find it? How do I find out the interquartile range? We say IQR. We find out whatever number the upper quartile is, which I'm just going to say UQ for upper quartile, and I'm going to minus the lower quartile. And that gives you the interquartile range. So let's have a look. So yeah, that's the diagram we talked about. So that purple line there is the interquartile range, right? The gap between the lower quartile and the upper quartile. So not the range, the interquartile range. So something a bit smaller. So moving on down, let's try this one. No, wait, I'm sure we have more. No, here, at this point, what I'm going to do is, well, let's go out of this one. If we're going to do a question, we might as well do one of the questions we were supposed to do anyway. I'm going to do the last one. Just because that number 3 there, that picture, that's from NZGrapher. So I know we aren't doing Kiwi birds and weight, but this kind of format, right? This shape, this layout is going to be the same as the one we're going to actually use. So we might as well get ready and get prepared using this. All right, so now if we had this data set and we were going through our PPDAT cycle and we reached analysis and we're now talking about spread, what do we say? So, yep, we'd have a title that says spread because we're saying we're going to analyze spread now. And then here's what we'll say. We got to talk about the female interquartile range first. And then we'll talk about the male. We'll talk about them separately. So, female to begin with. What is the interquartile range? Again, we just wrote it down right above, but I'm going to write it again. Is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. Now, if you got your graph drawn right on NZGrapher, that red writing on the left should be there just like this. And those numbers there should be all the numbers you need to figure this stuff out. So it goes a little something like this. Now, I know that first one is F, the female kiwi birds. Let's look on those numbers, and we want UQ and we want LQ. So we can find it there. We can see that UQ is 3.192, right? And we know LQ is 2.622, right? And that's also where the lower quartile and the upper quartile land on the kilogram scale at the bottom. So if we do that on our calculator, what do I get? Where is my calculator? Here it is. 3.192 minus 2.622. I get 0.57. And this is all in kilograms, by the way, because we're talking about weight. As you can see on the graph, we're talking about weight of kiwi birds. So here, this is what we actually write. We say the IQR, the interquartile range for female kiwi birds, is 0.57 kilograms. That's one sentence. Boom. And we leave it there. Now let's do the same thing for the male kiwi birds. The IQR for male kiwi birds is, and then we do the same thing. We go UQ minus LQ, upper quartile minus lower quartile. Now I can see it as being 2.429, right? So make sure you're seeing the same number there on the left hand over there as well. And the lower quartile is 2.069. So we say the IQR for male kiwi birds is 0.36 kilograms. All right, so we got those two sentences in. One about that first group, another one about that second group. It's pretty much the same sentence, but we just get different numbers. Okay, sentence number 3 is exactly this. It is saying, which one's bigger than which? Which one has a bigger IQR? Which one has a bigger spread? And we can see that the female kiwi bird has the bigger number there. So we say, the data for female, that's not female, female. The data for female kiwi birds has a greater or larger or bigger IQR than the male birds. By how much? And we have a think. Again, you go 0.57 minus 0.36 to find out the difference, and you get by 0.11. Nope, 0.21, sorry. By 0.21 kilograms. Right, so we're saying one's bigger than the other, and we say exactly by how much, right? And boom, that's about it. Then you've done this part. If you do want to try a little bit harder, this is what we talk about. If you did want to write more, we think about, I wonder why the IQR might be bigger. And you might make a sentence or two about that guess, having an assumption. And maybe you know something about kiwi birds, and you know something about maybe the difference between female kiwi birds and male kiwi birds that there might be a difference for. But anyway, that would be a big chunk of the IQR. That's one section of spread done. I reckon you'd do one more, and one other section would be overlap, which means the boxes in these graphs, right? Do they overlap, or do they not overlap? Do they overlap a little? Do they overlap entirely? What does that mean? And that kind of stuff. So the thing is, if they do overlap, right? This one kind of overlaps like that, the one that I just drew. So if I'm saying that this overlaps with each other, that they land on the same data point, no, we're saying that they're quite close. The majority of the weights for these kiwi birds, they're quite similar, the male and female kiwi birds. it suggests, right? Again, we're still analyzing. We're not making any conclusions yet. But again, if you actually look at the graph that we have here, the box doesn't overlap at all. Remember, we're not looking at the long whisker, the line that comes out from the box. We're talking about the box itself only. The box does not overlap. So we say you can say the boxes, or you can say the interquartile range does not overlap, right? You might even want to say which one's higher than the other one. The female group's IQR is let's not say IQR, groups box, or you can say middle 50% is higher than the male groups 50%, right? It's the whole box just out of it. They are not overlapping at all. So maybe the saying, the difference is quite definitive or significant. So we say maybe, or again, we're not making conclusions, we're just making suggestions and making assumptions. Maybe the difference between the female and the male kiwi bird weights, maybe they are quite different, the averages. And maybe we will say that if you want to. But to be honest, that is the sort of the core of the work for this week. So I know I've just done this one question, but it's pretty much the same kind of sentence. Same kind of sentence from here to here for that question and that question. But of course, that last question is the one that's closest to the kind of thing we'll have to actually write in our work when we come to it. So that's why I did that one as an example. Okay, I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any more questions or anything you want me to clarify. But otherwise, yeah, give that a shot. Give that a shot and write that in. And yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. See ya.